I was standing in my own living room, surrounded by my wife's entire family, when she turned to me with a smile I'd never seen before, cold, performative, cruel, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Richard, could you step out of the frame? Your face is kind of ruining the shot." 23 people laughed, not nervous laughter, real laughter. My daughter didn't even look up from her phone. My son smirked. And my mother-in-law, Patricia, the woman I'd been financially supporting for 11 years, nodded like my wife had just said something reasonable, something obvious. That was the moment I realized I wasn't a husband or a father anymore. I was a ghost who paid the mortgage. If you believe a man deserves respect in his own home, hit the like button right now to support our community. Let's get into this. But to understand how I got there, standing like a piece of furniture they wanted moved, you need to understand how invisible I'd become. And that didn't happen overnight. It took years, decades actually. My name is Richard Caldwell. I'm 57 years old. I spent 32 years building a career as a financial analyst for mid-sized corporations, the kind of work that sounds boring at parties, but pays for the parties. I'm not flashy. I don't drive a sports car or wear designer suits. I wear reading glasses that I bought at Costco. I drink black coffee because I forget to buy cream. I look, as my wife once joked to her sister when she thought I couldn't hear, like a divorced librarian who's given up. I met Caroline when I was 26 and she was 24. She was a receptionist at a dental office, beautiful in that effortless way some women are, with auburn hair and a laugh that made you feel like you'd said something clever even when you hadn't. We got married after dating for 2 years. It was simple. I thought it was love. Maybe it was back then. We had 2 kids, Daniel, now 28, and Sophie, 25. I worked. She stayed home. That was the deal. For a long time it worked. But at some point, maybe around the time the kids hit high school, I stopped being Richard and started being the provider. Not in a respectful, grateful way, in the way you think about a refrigerator. It's just there. It keeps things cold. You don't thank it. You only notice it when it stops working. Caroline stopped asking how my day was. She stopped laughing at my jokes, which, admittedly, were never great. She stopped sitting next to me on the couch. We didn't fight. Fighting would have required her to see me as someone worth arguing with. Instead, there was just distance. Polite, cold distance. I told myself it was normal. Marriages evolve, right? You can't expect butterflies after 30 years, but it wasn't just her, it was everyone. Daniel moved back home 3 years ago after his startup, some app that was supposed to disrupt the gig economy. Collapsed. He didn't ask if he could move back. He just showed up with garbage bags full of clothes and a gaming PC that he set up in the guest room I used as an office. When I suggested he start looking for work, he looked at me like I'd suggested he chew glass. "Dad, I'm networking," he said, as if spending 16 hours a day on Discord was a career strategy. Caroline defended him. "He's going through a hard time, Richard. Don't be so critical." Sophie was worse. She'd graduated with a degree in sociology, which she used to lecture me about privilege every Thanksgiving. She lived in a downtown loft that I paid for, $2,000 a month, not including utilities, and worked part-time at a non-profit that, as far as I could tell, organized poetry slams. She called me once a month, always when she needed something. "Dad, my car needs new tires." "Dad, can you Venmo me for rent?" Never "how are you," never "thank you." Just transactions. And then there was Patricia. Caroline's mother moved into our guest house 11 years ago after her second husband died and left her with nothing but debt. The guest house, a converted garage I'd renovated myself, was supposed to be temporary. "Just until she gets back on her feet," Caroline said. Patricia never got back on her feet. She got back on my wallet. I paid for everything, her groceries, her medications, her cable bill, which somehow included every premium channel known to man. And not once did she thank me. Instead, she criticized. My coffee was too weak. My lawn care was sloppy. I was too quiet at family dinners, which she hosted at my house using my food. But I didn't complain. That's not who I am. I'm the guy who keeps his head down and does what needs to be done. I thought that's what being a man meant. sacrifice, stability. Silence? I thought they'd appreciate it eventually. I was wrong. It started small. The disrespect, I mean. Little comments that were easy to brush off if you wanted to keep the peace, and I always wanted to keep the peace. Caroline started talking over me. Not in an aggressive way, just like I wasn't there. We'd be at dinner with her friends, and I'd start to say something, and she'd just launch into her own story, as if I hadn't spoken. Her friends wouldn't even notice. After a while, I stopped trying. Then came the jokes. "Richard's having one of his boring nights," she'd say when I was reading in the living room. "Don't mind him. He's basically furniture." Her sister would laugh. Patricia would nod approvingly, like Caroline had made a sharp observation. I'd smile. What else could I do? The kids picked up on it. Daniel started calling me the ATM when he texted. Not Dad, not even Richard. Just the ATM. Sophie would roll her eyes whenever I spoke, this exaggerated sigh like I was the most exhausting person alive. Once, when I asked her how her day was, she said, "Dad, I don't have the emotional bandwidth for small talk right now," and walked out of the room. I kept thinking it would pass, that it was a phase, that if I just stayed steady, stayed useful, they'd remember I was a person. But that was only the beginning. The family photo incident, the one I started with, happened 3 months ago. It was Patricia's 75th birthday. Caroline insisted we throw her a party. Not a small party, a big party. 70 people, catered food, a bartender, a rented photo booth. I wrote the check without asking how much it cost, because I'd learned that asking questions only led to lectures about being controlling. The party was at our house, obviously. I spent the morning setting up tables in the backyard, stringing lights, making sure the coolers were full. Caroline didn't help. She was getting ready upstairs, a process that took 4 hours and required the bathroom to look like a Mac counter had exploded. When the guests started arriving, I did what I always did. Smiled, shook hands, made small talk. I'm good at small talk. It's a skill you develop when no one wants to hear what you actually think. Patricia held court in the living room, surrounded by her friends, talking loudly about her journey and how blessed she was to have such a devoted daughter. She didn't mention me, not once. Around 7 p.m., Caroline decided it was time for a family photo. The whole family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, second cousins, people I'd never met. We all gathered in front of the fireplace. I stood in the back, I'm tall, it made sense, and Caroline positioned herself front and center, next to Patricia, who was seated in the good armchair, the one I'd bought. Caroline's brother, Jeff, was taking the photo with his phone. He counted down. 3, 2, and that's when Caroline turned, looked directly at me, and said it. "Richard, could you step out of the frame? Your face is kind of ruining the shot." The room went silent for half a second. Then someone laughed. Then someone else. Then everyone. Jeff lowered his phone, grinning. "Damn, Caroline," he said, cold-blooded. I stood there. I didn't move, I didn't speak, I just looked at her. She wasn't joking. Her eyes were flat, annoyed, like I was a smudge on a window. "I'm serious," she said. "We want this to look nice." I stepped out of the frame. I walked through the living room, through the kitchen, out the back door. I stood in the yard, near the fence, where the string lights I'd hung didn't quite reach. I could hear the laughter inside. I could hear the camera clicking. I thought it couldn't get worse. I was wrong. That night, after everyone left and the house was trashed with paper plates and half-empty wine glasses, I sat in my office, Daniel's old gaming room, the one he'd colonized, and stared at my computer screen. I didn't cry. I'm not built that way. But something inside me had shifted. Not broken, shifted. Like a tectonic plate realizing it's been sitting in the wrong place for 30 years. I opened my email, checked my bank statements, looked at the spreadsheets I kept for household expenses, the ones Caroline never asked to see, because she didn't care where the money came from as long as it kept coming. And then I did something I'd never done before. I started keeping a separate record, a hidden one, every expense, every withdrawal. Every time Caroline used the credit card I'd given her, the one with no limit because I trusted her. Every Venmo request from Sophie. Every time Daniel ordered DoorDash on my account at 2 in the morning. I didn't know what I was documenting. I just knew I needed to. Because deep down, in a place I didn't want to admit existed, I had a feeling. A feeling that the disrespect wasn't the worst of it. I started small, quietly, the way I do everything. I created a new folder on my laptop, password protected, buried 3 layers deep in a directory labeled Tax Archives, 2019-2023. Nobody in my family had ever opened a tax document in their lives. It was the perfect hiding place. Every morning I'd wake up at 5:30, an hour before Caroline, and I'd spend 45 minutes documenting bank statements, credit card transactions, Venmo receipts. I'd screenshot everything, organize it by date, cross-reference it with our joint account activity. I told myself I was just being thorough, that I was protecting myself from some vague future disaster I couldn't name yet. But I knew, somewhere deep in my gut, I knew. The numbers told a story. Caroline spent $6,000 a month on average, not on groceries or utilities or household necessities, on things. Designer handbags she never used, dinner reservations at restaurants I wasn't invited to, a Peloton bike that sat in our bedroom gathering dust because she'd used it twice. She'd also been making cash withdrawals, small ones at first, 200 here, 300 there, but over the past year, they'd escalated. $1,500 in cash every month, like clockwork, always from the ATM near her yoga studio. I didn't ask her about it, not yet, because asking would have tipped my hand, and I'd learned something important in 32 years of marriage. Information is leverage, but only if the other side doesn't know you have it. Sophie was easier to track. Every expense she had was a crisis. Dad, emergency, my laptop died. Need $1,800 for a new one. I'd Venmo it. 2 weeks later, I'd see Instagram photos of her at a rooftop bar in Brooklyn with a bottle of champagne that cost more than the laptop. Dad, my student loans are killing me. Can you help with $2,000 this month? I'd send it. Then I'd check her LinkedIn. No job updates, but plenty of posts about attending activist conferences in Portland and Austin. Over 18 months, I'd given Sophie $47,000. She'd thanked me 11 times. Do the math on that ratio. Daniel was worse because he was there. Every day I'd come home from work and hear the sound of his gaming headset through the walls, explosions, screaming, the occasional slam of his fist on the desk when his team lost. He hadn't looked for a job in 6 months. When I asked him about it, he'd say he was waiting for the right opportunity, which apparently meant scrolling LinkedIn for 20 minutes a day and then playing Valorant for 9 hours. But here's the thing that made my blood cold. I checked our streaming accounts. Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Disney+, Paramount, Apple TV. I paid for all of them. Daniel had shared the passwords with 14 people. 14. Friends from college I'd never met. His ex-girlfriend who'd cheated on him. People whose names I didn't recognize. He'd turned my accounts into a charity for strangers. When I confronted him about it, he shrugged. Dad, it's not like you're using all 5 screens at once. Caroline overheard and laughed. Actually laughed. Richard, you're being dramatic. It's just streaming services. I didn't argue. I just added it to the folder. The real discovery came on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were Caroline's self-care days. She'd leave the house at 9 a.m. for yoga, then brunch, then a massage, then sometimes a movie or shopping, or whatever else filled the hours between morning and when I got home at 6. I never questioned it. She'd been doing it for 3 years. I need this, Richard, she'd told me once. I spent 20 years raising kids. I deserve time for myself. I agreed. I did. I wanted her to be happy. But on this particular Tuesday, I'd forgotten my reading glasses at home, the Costco ones I mentioned, and I drove back during lunch to grab them. The house was supposed to be empty. Caroline should have been gone. Daniel was probably asleep. Patricia was at her weekly book club, which I also paid for. I pulled into the driveway and saw a car I didn't recognize. A black Audi A4 parked right where I usually parked, like it belonged there. I sat in my car for a full minute. My brain was doing that thing where it tries to logic its way out of the obvious conclusion. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a contractor. Maybe it's someone lost who needed to use the bathroom. I walked inside. The house was quiet except for the faint sound of music coming from upstairs. something jazzy. Norah Jones, I think. Caroline loved Norah Jones. I stood at the bottom of the stairs. I could have called out, I could have walked up there. But something stopped me. That same instinct that told me to start documenting told me now to wait. I didn't go upstairs. Instead, I went to my office, grabbed my glasses, and left. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a Starbucks for 45 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, my hands shaking just slightly. When I got home that evening, the Audi was gone. Caroline was in the kitchen making salmon, my least favorite, which she knew, and she smiled at me like nothing had happened. "How was your day?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Yours?" "Oh, yoga was brutal. My hamstrings are killing me." I nodded. I ate the salmon. I did the dishes. And after she went to bed, I went into my office and did something I'd never done before. I installed a security camera. Not a visible one. I'm not an idiot. I bought a small, discreet, motion-activated camera online, the kind marketed for nannies and suspicious spouses, and I hid it on the bookshelf in the living room, angled toward the front door and the stairs. The description said it could record for up to 30 days on a loop and send alerts to my phone whenever it detected movement. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid, that there was a reasonable explanation for the black Audi. 3 days later, I got an alert at 10:47 a.m. I was at work, sitting in a meeting about third-quarter projections. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it under the table. Motion detected. I excused myself, said I had an urgent call, and went to the bathroom. I opened the app. The video was clear. High definition, no ambiguity. Caroline was at the front door. She was wearing the cream-colored dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she said made her feel beautiful. She was laughing, and standing next to her was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, maybe late 40s, with the kind of tan you get from golfing 3 times a week, and the kind of watch you get from making 7 figures. He had his hand on the small of her back. They kissed. Not a peck, a real kiss, the kind married people stop doing after a decade. Then they walked upstairs. I watched the timestamp. They were up there for 2 hours and 16 minutes. I sat on the bathroom floor of my office building, my back against the stall door, and I stared at my phone. I played the video 3 times. Then I forwarded it to my encrypted folder. Then I deleted it from my phone. Then I went back to the meeting and finished the presentation on third-quarter projections like nothing had happened. Because here's what I realized in that bathroom. I wasn't surprised. Not really. Somewhere deep down, I'd known. Maybe not the specifics, but the shape of it, the truth. I wasn't a husband. I was a sponsor, a financier, a man whose only value was the signature on the checks, and now I had proof. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because confronting her would have been emotional, messy, and I'd lose. No. I needed more. I needed everything. I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. Tell me in the comments, would you have exploded right there, or would you have waited like I did? Over the next 6 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. Not a different person, just a clearer version of who I'd always been. Patient, methodical, invisible. I installed 2 more cameras, one in the kitchen, angled toward the back door, one in the garage, covering Patricia's guest house entrance. I told myself it was for security. Technically, it was. The footage was devastating, and I mean that literally. It devastated the illusion I'd been living in. Caroline's boyfriend, I learned his name was Trevor because she said it breathlessly on camera at least a dozen times, came over every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork. Sometimes they stayed in the house. Sometimes they left together and came back 3 hours later, her hair messier, his shirt untucked. Once I watched them drink a bottle of wine in my living room, the expensive Cabernet I'd been saving for a special occasion, and laugh about something on her phone. She showed him the screen. He laughed harder. I couldn't hear what it was, but I saw her swipe through photos. Photos of me, I realized later. Photos she'd taken without me knowing. Me asleep on the couch, me reading at the table. Me looking, as she'd said to her sister, like a divorced librarian who's given up. She was mocking me, to him, in my house. But Trevor wasn't even the worst part. Patricia, my saintly, devoted mother-in-law, was running her own operation. The cameras caught her leaving the guest house every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at exactly 2 p.m. She'd drive off in the car I'd bought her, a used Honda CR-V, and return 4 hours later with shopping bags. Not grocery bags, shopping bags. Nordstrom, Macy's, Anthropologie. I checked her bank account. I was an authorized user, had been since she moved in, because I was the one depositing her allowance every month. $1,500, which I thought was for medication and essentials. She was spending $4,000 a month on my credit card, the one I'd given her for emergencies, clothes, jewelry, spa treatments, dinners at steakhouses with her book club friends, where she'd pick up the entire tab and bask in their gratitude. And here's the kicker. She'd been telling those friends that she was paying, that she was comfortable after her husband's death, that she was independent. She was buying respect with my money and taking credit for it. I didn't sleep much during those 6 weeks. I'd lie in bed next to Caroline, listening to her breathe, wondering if she was dreaming about Trevor, wondering if she'd ever loved me at all, or if I'd just been the safe choice. The boring guy with the stable job who'd never leave. I started seeing a lawyer, not a divorce lawyer, not yet, a forensic accountant who specialized in marital asset protection. His name was Martin Cross, and he worked out of a glass office building downtown that smelled like leather and old money. He was in his 60s, grey-haired, with the kind of calm authority that comes from seeing every type of human disaster. I brought him everything, the folder, the videos, the bank statements, the credit card logs, 30 years of financial records, organized by year, category, and recipient. He looked at it for 10 minutes without speaking. Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "Mr. Caldwell, I've been doing this for 32 years. This is the most thorough documentation I've ever seen from a client." "Is it enough?" I asked. "Enough for what?" "To win." He smiled. Not a happy smile. A shark smile. "Mr. Caldwell, you're not going to win. You're going to obliterate." Martin explained the strategy. California is a no-fault divorce state, which meant the affair didn't matter for the divorce itself, but it mattered for everything else. Custody of assets, spousal support, division of property, and more importantly, it mattered for leverage. "She doesn't know you know," Martin said. "That's your advantage. Right now she thinks you're the same passive man you've always been. She thinks she can walk away with half of everything and a nice alimony check. But you have proof of dissipation of marital assets. You have proof of fraud, her mother using your credit card under false pretenses. You have proof of financial abuse, and if we play this right, she'll have nothing." "What about the kids?" I asked. Martin's face softened. "Mr. Caldwell, your kids are adults. Legally, they're not part of this. But emotionally, you need to prepare yourself. They've been conditioned to see you as a wallet. When that wallet closes, they're going to be angry. They're not going to understand, and they may not come around." I nodded. I'd already accepted that. "Here's what we do," Martin continued. "We file for divorce, but we do it strategically. First, we freeze the joint accounts, all of them. Credit cards, checking, savings. We file a motion for temporary restraining orders on all marital assets. Then we demand a full forensic audit. We make her prove where every dollar went. And while she's scrambling to get a lawyer and figure out what happened, we negotiate from a position of total control." "When?" I asked. "How soon can you move out?" "I'm not moving out. It's my house." Martin smiled again. That shark smile. Even better. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank, one Caroline didn't know about. I transferred my paycheck there. I cancelled every credit card she had access to. I documented every asset we owned, the house, the cars, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio I'd built over 30 years. I made copies of everything. I put the originals in a safety deposit box. And then, on a Saturday morning in late September, I told Caroline I wanted to talk. She was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, drinking coffee from the mug I'd bought her that said, "World's Best Mom." Daniel was still asleep upstairs. Sophie was God knows where. Patricia was in the guest house, probably ordering something else on my credit card. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. She looked up, blinked. "What?" "I'm filing for divorce. I've already retained an attorney. The papers will be served on Monday." Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, anger, and then, finally, amusement. She laughed. "Richard," she said, "are you serious right now?" "Completely." "Why, because of the photo thing? I was joking. God, you're so sensitive. It's not about the photo." "Then what is it about?" I pulled out my phone, opened the video. The one of her and Trevor kissing at the front door. I placed the phone on the counter between us. Her face went white. "I know about Trevor," I said. "I know about the money. I know about your mother. I know everything." She stared at the phone, then at me. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "The joint accounts are frozen," I continued. "The credit cards are cancelled. You'll receive the formal paperwork on Monday, but I wanted to tell you in person. Professional courtesy. You froze the accounts?" Her voice was rising now, shrill. "Richard, that's our money." "No," I said. "It's my money. You just spent it." She stood up. Her hands were shaking. "You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll take everything. You'll do nothing," I said, "because if you fight me, I'll release every piece of evidence I have. The affair, the fraud, the financial abuse. I'll make sure Trevor's wife knows. I'll make sure your friends know. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are." Her face twisted. "You're bluffing. Try me." For the first time in 32 years, Caroline looked at me like I was a person, a dangerous person. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," I said. "You have, for a long time." I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my coat, and left. I drove to a hotel, a nice one, the kind with a good bar and a view of the city. I checked in, went to my room, and sat on the bed. And for the first time in 6 weeks, I exhaled. The fallout was nuclear. Caroline called me 63 times that first weekend. I didn't answer. She texted me 217 messages. I didn't read them. She showed up at the hotel on Sunday night, somehow found out where I was staying, probably called every Marriott in the city, and demanded to talk. The front desk called my room. I told them I wasn't available. She sent Daniel to reason with me. He showed up Monday morning looking hungover and confused and said, "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom says you froze her accounts." I did. Why? Because she was stealing from me. Stealing? "Dad, you're married. It's her money too." "No, Daniel, it's my money. I earned it. She spent it on a man named Trevor and a lifestyle she didn't tell me about." His face went blank. "Wait, Mom's cheating on you?" "For at least 18 months, probably longer." He sat down on the hotel room chair, rubbing his face. "Jesus. I need you to move out," I said. "You have 30 days. "Move out? Dad, where am I supposed to go? I don't know, but you're 28. You're not my responsibility anymore. I can't afford rent." "Then get a job." He stared at me like I'd just told him to swim to Australia. "Dad, I'm not discussing this. 30 days. He left. He didn't slam the door. He just left. Quietly. Defeated. Sophie called that night. She was screaming before I even said hello. "You froze my rent money? Dad, I have bills. I have a lease." "You have a job," I said, "part-time, I believe, at a non-profit. That pays nothing. Then get a full-time job." "Are you kidding me right now?" "Sophie, I've given you $47,000 in 18 months. You're 25. You're a college graduate. You can support yourself. This is because of Mom, isn't it? You're punishing her by punishing me." "No, I'm stopping enabling you by enabling you." She hung up. She texted me an hour later, "I hope you die alone." I didn't respond. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Martin had been right. Caroline was scrambling. She hired a lawyer, some guy named Todd who worked in family law and had a nice website but no real strategy. He tried to file an emergency motion to unfreeze the accounts. Martin blocked it. He tried to argue that I was hiding assets. Martin produced every document, every receipt, every transaction, all organized in a way that made it clear I'd hidden nothing. Caroline's lawyer tried to paint me as controlling and financially abusive. Martin laughed in the courtroom, literally laughed. "Your Honor," he said, "my client has documentation showing that Mrs. Caldwell spent over $6,000 a month on personal expenses without his knowledge, conducted an extramarital affair for 18 months, and allowed her mother to fraudulently use his credit card to the tune of $48,000 over 3 years. If that's financial abuse, I'd love to know what financial freedom looks like. The judge, a woman in her 50s named Hernandez, looked at Caroline with the kind of expression you give someone who just insulted your intelligence. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, "do you have any evidence to refute these claims?" Caroline's lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, we're still gathering—" "That's a no," Judge Hernandez said. "Motion denied. Accounts remain frozen pending full forensic audit." Caroline started crying. Loud, theatrical sobs. Judge Hernandez was unmoved. "Mrs. Caldwell, save it for your therapist. Next case." The audit took 4 months. Martin hired a forensic accountant, a woman named Dr. Patel who looked like someone's sweet grandmother, but had the demeanor of a detective interrogating a war criminal. She tore through every transaction, every withdrawal, every expenditure. The final report was 147 pages long. It concluded that Caroline had spent over $218,000 of marital funds on non-essential personal expenses without my consent. It concluded that Patricia had fraudulently charged $48,000 to credit cards issued in my name. It concluded that Daniel had used shared accounts for personal expenses totaling $32,000 while contributing nothing to the household. Dr. Patel's recommendation was unambiguous. Mrs. Caldwell should be held liable for reimbursement of dissipated assets. Full division of remaining assets should favor Mr. Caldwell given documented financial misconduct. Martin showed me the report in his office. "This is a clean kill, Richard. We can settle now and she'll take maybe 20% of assets. No alimony, no nothing. Or we can go to trial and she'll walk away with even less. What do you recommend?" "Settle. Trials are expensive, emotionally and financially." "I want a trial." Martin raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I want her to hear it. All of it. In front of a judge. I want it on the record." He smiled. That shark smile. "You're my favorite client." The trial was set for March, 5 months after I'd walked out of my own kitchen and checked into a hotel that had become more of a home than the house I'd paid for over 30 years. In those 5 months, my life transformed in ways I hadn't anticipated. I moved into a smaller place, a 2-bedroom condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city I'd worked in my entire adult life but never really seen. I bought new furniture. Not expensive furniture, just mine. A couch I picked out. A coffee table that didn't have water rings from other people's glasses. A bed that no one else slept in. I started going to the gym. Not obsessively, just 3 times a week. I hired a trainer named Marcus, who was 26 and called me Mr. C, and didn't ask questions about why a 57-year-old man suddenly wanted to deadlift. I lost 18 pounds. I bought clothes that actually fit. I got a haircut from a real barber instead of the supercuts Caroline used to send me to. I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize myself, not in a bad way, in a new way. But the family situation deteriorated exactly as Martin had predicted. Daniel moved out 2 weeks before his deadline, but not before sending me a 10-paragraph email about how I'd destroyed the family and chosen money over love. He moved in with some friends in a house they were renting in the valley. Caroline was paying his share of rent. With what money I didn't know and didn't care. Sophie stopped speaking to me entirely. She blocked my number. She blocked me on social media. When I tried to reach out through email, she responded once, "You're dead to me." 3 words, no punctuation. I saved it in the folder, though I'm not sure why. Patricia moved into Caroline's new apartment, a 2-bedroom she was renting in Pasadena that she could barely afford even after getting a job at a real estate office. I'd heard through Martin's investigator, yes, I kept him on retainer, that she was working as a receptionist, 40 hours a week. For the first time in 11 years, Patricia was paying her own bills. I felt nothing about that. Not satisfaction. Not guilt. Nothing. Caroline, meanwhile, had become a completely different person in the eyes of her friends and family. She'd crafted a narrative, I'd learned this through depositions, where I was the villain, the controlling husband who'd monitored her every move. The financial abuser who'd cut her off without warning. The cold, calculating man who'd destroyed his family over paranoia about an affair that, according to her latest version of events, never even happened. Trevor conveniently had disappeared. His wife had found out. I'd made sure of that and filed for her own divorce. Last I heard, Trevor was living in San Diego and working for a cryptocurrency startup. Caroline never mentioned him in court. Her lawyer advised her not to. The trial began on March 12th, a Tuesday. Fitting, somehow. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. I'd seen enough legal dramas to picture something grand, but this was just a room. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that looked like it came from an office furniture catalogue. Judge Hernandez presided again. She'd been assigned to the case from the beginning, and I got the sense she didn't like wasting her time. Caroline sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, Todd. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with a cheap suit and the kind of nervous energy that suggested he knew he was outmatched. Caroline wore a navy dress, conservative, demure. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup, or at least not much. She looked like someone going to a funeral. I sat with Martin. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my first car and smelled faintly of sandalwood. He'd told me that morning, "Just sit quietly. Look calm. Don't react to anything she says. You're the reasonable one. Let her lawyer do the work of making her look unreasonable." The trial lasted 3 days. Todd opened with what I assume he thought was a strong argument, that I'd been controlling and secretive about finances throughout the marriage, that Caroline had no access to information about our money, and that freezing the accounts was an act of financial terrorism. He called Caroline to the stand first. She cried a lot. She talked about how she'd sacrificed everything to raise our children, how she'd given up her career to support me, how she'd trusted me to take care of the finances because I was so much better at numbers. And then one day, she said, her voice breaking, he just cut me off, without warning, without explanation. He froze everything. I couldn't buy groceries, I couldn't pay for gas, I felt like a prisoner. Todd nodded sympathetically. "And did Mr. Caldwell ever discuss his concerns with you before taking this drastic action?" "Never," Caroline said. "He never said a word. He just did it." Martin didn't cross-examine her on day one. He just smiled and took notes. Todd called a few of Caroline's friends to testify about what a devoted mother and wife she'd been, how shocked they were by my behavior, how Caroline had always spoken so lovingly about me, a lie, but they said it under oath. It was all very emotional, very sympathetic. Judge Hernandez looked bored. Martin opened with a simple question. "Mrs. Caldwell, do you know a man named Trevor Holbrook?" Caroline froze, just for a second, but it was enough. "Yes," she said. "How do you know him?" "He's a friend." "A friend. I see. How did you meet?" "At yoga." "And how often did you see Mr. Holbrook?" "I don't know. Occasionally." Martin nodded. He walked to the evidence table and picked up a tablet. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter into Evidence Exhibit A, a series of surveillance videos from the Caldwell residence, dated between June 2024 and September 2024. Todd objected. "Your Honor, these videos were obtained without my client's knowledge or consent in my client's own home," Martin interrupted, "which he owns and which Mrs. Caldwell also resided in. There's no expectation of privacy in a shared marital residence, Your Honor. This is established law." Judge Hernandez sighed. "Overruled. Let's see the videos." Martin played 3 clips. Each one showed Caroline and Trevor entering the house, kissing, laughing. In one, they were drinking wine on the couch. In another, they walked upstairs holding hands. The timestamps were clear. The courtroom was silent. "Mrs. Caldwell," Martin said, his voice calm, almost gentle, "would you still characterize Mr. Holbrook as a friend?" Caroline's face was red. Her lawyer was whispering urgently in her ear. It wasn't. Yes or no, Mrs. Caldwell? Did you have a sexual relationship with Trevor Holbrook while married to my client?" Silence. "Mrs. Caldwell?" "Yes," she whispered. "I'm sorry. Could you speak up for the record?" "Yes," she shouted. Yes, I had an affair. Are you happy? Martin didn't smile. No, Mrs. Caldwell, I'm not happy, but I am satisfied that we've established the truth. He turned to Judge Hernandez. Your Honor, I'd also like to enter Exhibit B, phone records showing over 300 text messages between Mrs. Caldwell and Mr. Holbrook over a 14-month period, and Exhibit C, credit card statements showing that Mrs. Caldwell spent over $4,700 on hotel rooms during the same period, charged to a joint account without Mr. Caldwell's knowledge. Todd was scrambling now. Your Honor, this is a no-fault state. The affair isn't relevant to asset division. The affair isn't, Martin said, but the dissipation of marital assets to fund the affair absolutely is. Mrs. Caldwell spent nearly $5,000 of joint funds on hotel rooms to conduct an extramarital relationship. That's textbook dissipation. Judge Hernandez nodded. I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Cross. This was the day I'd been waiting for. Martin called Patricia to the stand. She walked in looking furious. She'd aged badly in the past few months. Her hair was grayer, her face harder. She sat down and glared at me like I'd personally insulted her ancestors. Martin was polite, almost kind. Mrs. Brennan, you lived in the guest house on the Caldwell property for 11 years, is that correct? Yes. And during that time, did you pay rent? No, Caroline said I didn't need to. Did you contribute to household expenses, utilities, groceries, maintenance? No. And Mr. Caldwell provided you with a credit card for emergencies, correct? Yes. Can you define emergency for me, Mrs. Brennan? She blinked. What? Martin picked up a thick binder. This is a record of every charge you made on that credit card over a 3-year period. Let's go through some of them, shall we? February 2022, $800 at Nordstrom. March 2022, $1,200 at a spa in Santa Monica. April 2022, $600 at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Would you characterize those as emergencies? Patricia's face went red. You needed a $600 steak dinner. I was entertaining friends. With my client's money, he said I could use the card. For emergencies, Mrs. Brennan, not for a 3-year shopping spree that totaled $48,000. She had no answer. Martin entered the credit card statements into evidence. All of them. Todd didn't even try to object. Then Martin called Daniel. My son walked in looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He wouldn't look at me. He sat in the witness chair and stared at his hands. Mr. Caldwell, Martin said gently, you lived in your father's home for 3 years after your business failed, correct? Yes. Did you pay rent? No. Did you contribute to household expenses? No. Did you have a job during this time? I was in between opportunities. For 3 years? Daniel said nothing. Mr. Caldwell, during those 3 years, did you use your father's accounts to make personal purchases? Sometimes. He said it was okay. Did he say it was okay for you to spend $32,000? Daniel's head snapped up. What? Martin showed him the records. Amazon purchases, DoorDash, Uber Eats, gaming subscriptions, Venmo payments to friends, $32,000 over 3 years. I didn't know it was that much, Daniel said quietly. But you knew you were spending his money. Yes. And did you ever thank him? Daniel looked at me for the first time. His eyes were wet. No, not really. Martin nodded. No further questions. Judge Hernandez called a recess after Daniel's testimony. We reconvened an hour later. She didn't waste time. I've reviewed all the evidence, she said. The surveillance footage, the financial records, the testimony, and I'm going to be very clear about my findings. She looked at Caroline. Mrs. Caldwell, you conducted an extramarital affair and used marital funds to facilitate that affair. You spent over $200,000 on personal expenses without your husband's knowledge or consent. You allowed your mother to fraudulently use credit accounts, and you enabled your adult son to drain family resources while contributing nothing. This isn't a case of financial abuse by Mr. Caldwell. This is a case of financial abuse of Mr. Caldwell. Caroline was crying again. Real tears this time, I think. Here's my ruling, Judge Hernandez continued. All marital assets will be divided 70-30 in favor of Mr. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell is liable for reimbursement of all dissipated funds, $218,000, to be paid from her share of the settlement. There will be no alimony. Mrs. Caldwell is 49 years old and perfectly capable of employment. Mr. Caldwell will retain full ownership of the family home. Mrs. Caldwell has 30 days to remove her personal belongings. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. I walked out of that courtroom and felt nothing. Not joy, not vindication, just quiet. Martin shook my hand. Congratulations, Richard. That was a clean sweep. Thank you, I said. What are you going to do now? I thought about it. I don't know. Live, I guess. He smiled. Good answer. That was 4 months ago. Caroline moved out of the house on a rainy Saturday in April. I wasn't there. I'd hired movers to supervise. She took her clothes, some furniture, a few photo albums. She left behind everything else. The coffee mugs, the throw pillows, the Peloton bike. I donated most of it. Daniel sent me an email 3 weeks ago. It was short. Dad, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what I was doing. I got a job. It's just retail, but it's something. I hope you're okay. I haven't responded yet. I will, eventually. Sophie hasn't contacted me. I don't expect her to. Patricia moved to Arizona to live with her sister. Good riddance. Trevor's wife, from what I understand, took him for everything in their divorce. Poetic justice. As for me, I'm doing fine, better than fine, actually. I wake up when I want. I eat what I want. I watch what I want. I have friends now, real friends. People I met at the gym or at a book club I joined. People who see me as Richard, not as a wallet or a ghost or a convenient target for mockery. I'm dating someone. Her name is Angela. She's a librarian, ironically enough, 53 years old, divorced, with 2 adult kids who actually like her. She thinks I'm interesting. She laughs at my jokes. She doesn't need my money because she has her own. Last week she asked me what I learned from everything that happened. I thought about it for a long time. I learned, I said, that respect isn't something you give away for free, that love without reciprocity is just servitude, and that the most dangerous thing you can do in life is become invisible. She kissed me. You're not invisible to me. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. If this story reminded you that you should never accept crumbs of affection, hit that subscribe button. We tell the hard truths here. Welcome to the pack. I'm Richard Caldwell. I'm 57 years old. I spent 32 years being invisible. But I'm not invisible anymore, and I never will be again.